Europe rang in 2026 with what's considered the biggest shakeup of green trade rules for decades. Companies selling goods into the EU will have to prove that they comply with low carbon regulations. It's all part of the push towards climate neutrality by 2050. Now, to understand Europe's carbon border tax and what that means for global supply chains and Taiwan, we are joined in the studio by Freddie Höglund. He's the CEO of the European Chamber of Commerce in Taiwan. Thank you very much for being in the studio with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to start with just a bigger picture look about what the European Chamber of Commerce does here. What is the role they play here in Taiwan?
So we represent European business here, European investments. Europeans are the largest foreign direct investors in Taiwan. We have approximately 80 billion euros worth of investments since the 1950s. And most of those recent investments are in the energy sector, in particular offshore wind. Every year we produce an annual position paper. We have a total of 29 different industry committees, and their purpose is to provide suggestions and recommendations for the government here in Taiwan on how to ease the environment for investment into Taiwan.
Could you tell us how Taiwan is doing in the bigger picture as far as aligning itself with international carbon standards that are required, particularly in Europe? And secondly, what you're advising companies here to do?
Okay, so basically Europe was one of the first to actually commit to net zero 2050. And the European climate law was introduced in, I think, 2021, where this became legally binding. There have also been interim goals that have been set. For example, by 2030, we need to see a reduction of around 55% based on the 1990 values. And so far, up until now, Europe has really come up with about reductions of about 37%, just over 37%. So we're well on the way. It's also notable that during the same period, growth has been around 71%. So it really shows that it is possible to decouple emissions from economic growth. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the carbon border adjustment mechanism, more commonly known as CBAM, this is indeed the intention here is to reduce carbon emissions. The primary objective is not to collect fees or a tax, if you will. It really is to provide incentives for companies to reduce their carbon emissions. Taiwan is also introducing its own equivalent of CBAM. We are very happy to see that, of course, and we understand from talking to the Ministry of Environment that there will be a convergence slowly towards the European standard. It won't be 100% applicable, at least not in the beginning, but eventually we would like to see them as much aligned as possible because it makes trading so much easier. And it affects certain industries to begin with, production of metals and irons and aluminium and so on, but other areas will be affected going forward. And the idea is here that anything that has been offset in Taiwan can be offset against European carbon fees as well. So it really is a compatible introduction of these initiatives.
From the European perspective, is there a concern that Taiwanese companies, and there are many critical Taiwanese companies, particularly with its dominance in the semiconductor industries, would start pivoting away from Europe or would look to other markets due to these more stringent carbon rules?
I don't think that's really of a major concern. US is already the major export market for Taiwanese industry in general. I don't think so. I would see, on the contrary, perhaps that it would perhaps be more of a case where we can see perhaps a little bit more balance, a bit more focus towards Europe eventually, because I mean this is a global trend. It will continue regardless of what other countries are doing. The European Union is one of the largest economies in the world, and I can not see really Taiwan shying away from this.
So Europe has been one of the leaders in renewable energies, and how much has renewable energy played into Europe's carbon goals or net zero goals?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that Europe is really the global leader when it comes to renewables and renewable energy, the energy policy that I outlined earlier and so on. This is a major driver when it comes to Taiwan. Taiwan has committed, as I said earlier, to 2050 net zero. There are challenges along the way here. It is not an easy topic to address. Originally, Taiwan has set a goal of 2025 to reach 20% of renewables. That target was missed due to different factors. So it's not an easy subject indeed. It is very, very important for Taiwan to have investments into renewables because Taiwan imports otherwise basically all of its energy from overseas. There's also the factor that plays in, which is energy security. Having a diversified source of energy plays into the security factor as well here. And if Taiwan can diversify, let's say, to build offshore wind farms and so on, it sort of reduces the risk to invest in import coal and liquid natural gas. And then, of course, there's the obvious result also that having one LNG plant, it becomes much more of a easy target as opposed to 1,500 windmills that are spread over across the Taiwan Strait. So that also is a bit of a diversification when it comes to energy security.
Taiwan officially became a nuclear-free country in 2025. Do you believe that nuclear has to be, in order to reach its goals, and as you said, Taiwan's missed some of its nuclear energy goals, does nuclear energy have to become a factor here?
So nuclear is, of course, a very tricky question even for Europe. We don't, as a chamber, have a firm position on this. It's simply because about half of the European countries are for and half of them are against. So it's very difficult for us to have a clear position on that. Having said that, though, there are unique challenges for Taiwan. Ultimately, it's going to be the Taiwanese people that have to decide if they want to have nuclear or not. What is clear is that it is not a quick fix. It is not a silver bullet that will solve their energy issues here in Taiwan. Even if the second and the third nuclear power plant were to be restarted, we're talking many, many years, perhaps a decade or so, before that is even possible. And even then, it would only be providing 7, 8, maybe 9% of the total energy supply. So it's certainly a lot of challenges there. Then you've got the issue of the dense population, the seismic activity, etc. So it is not an easy nut to crack. We will, of course, support in any way we can, whatever the Taiwanese people decide, but ultimately it really is up to them to decide what they want to do when it comes to nuclear energy.
Right, going back to Taiwan's carbon initiatives. So saying that then, what kind of information is available for Taiwanese businesses operating and manufacturing here, particularly those that are currently exporting to Europe?
Yeah, I think all the companies that are affected by the carbon regulations will be fully aware of where to go. There's ample information available on European Commission's websites and so on, really, detailing the different details of what needs to be complied by, and also the fees that will be charged for the different industries. So I think there's really no excuse not to find out, to be able to comply with the regulations going forward.
Europe's always been a leader when it comes to net zero and its environmental initiatives, but we've seen the U.S. administration somewhat vacillate between sending mixed signals on ESG and climate policy, from saying they need stricter disclosure to political pushback against ESG initiatives. How has that affected trade, would you say, with Europe, or companies in particular when they're investing in their ESG initiatives?
Yes, so as you point out, the US has taken a bit of a different approach, but in particular more recently. This has been a good opportunity for European business to invest in ESG and renewables in general. When it comes to, for example, investments into energy and the energy sector, in particular the renewables sector, Europeans enjoy a very nice market position here. Basically 90%, maybe perhaps even 95% of the investments into this sector are from European companies. So this has given us a great advantage, and we can see in Europe in particular, consumers are demanding more adaptation of ESG policies and environmentally friendly policies and sustainability, circular economy, etc. And Taiwan is no different. This is something that we're all experiencing climate change, and this is going to continue regardless of what other countries are doing. And I think the sooner we get on board on that, the better. And Taiwan is doing a good job. A lot of progress has been made. A lot of investments have been made into solar, into offshore wind, into onshore wind, and so on. Obviously, there is more that can be done when it comes to policy and coordination and so on. But generally speaking, in this regard, Taiwan is on the right track.
Right. You did mention that Taiwan has missed some of its renewable energy goals. What would you say, given the fact that it makes sense for Taiwan to be heading in this direction for its energy security and for to supply the huge demand in energy, particularly from its industries, what would you say is the most major sticking point in this renewable energy push here in Taiwan? What's stopping the momentum?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think there needs to be more and better coordination between the ministries and the agencies when it comes to climate policy and the implementation, the application process. Currently, many different industry agencies and so on are involved in part of the application and approval process. That makes it very, very difficult for companies to come here and to sort of figure out the maze of how to actually implement their projects. We are recommending perhaps also that Taiwan could look at what Europe is doing in this regard. We have several countries in Europe that have created a Ministry of Energy in order to coordinate this better, to have sort of an overarching authority be responsible for the implementation of this. So this is something that is one area where Taiwan could really take after Europe. We have other challenges that are currently we're currently facing within the next 5 years. For example, about 300 megawatts of onshore wind are going to be reaching the end of its life. Re-permitting is an issue. Re-permitting has become more difficult now. They've expanded the area last year from where the environmental impact assessment should be done from 250 meters to 500 meters. Re-permitting in Europe has proven to be a very successful solution. Basically, you can produce more energy, perhaps up to 3 times as much energy, in the same area with fewer turbines, simply because they're more efficient, they're newer, etc. This is something that Taiwan could take after. There is, of course, resistance to the implementation of onshore wind simply because of Taiwan's dense population and so on. But we believe that there are areas where Taiwan could expand, for example, along highways, in harbors and so on. So these are some of the solutions that we are suggesting and recommending. We shouldn't be giving up on onshore wind just because it's densely populated. And Taiwan needs to come up with more energy supply, in particular, more renewable energy. One of the issues that we face in Taiwan now is the lack of renewable green energy. Mm-hmm. And this will pose a challenge and perhaps even a threat to foreign direct investment going forward. It is such that many of the international corporations, they have global goals that they need to achieve. And if green energy is not available in Taiwan, they will have to go elsewhere. So Taiwan needs to really do everything it can to make sure there's enough renewable green energy available.
So we're just about running out of time here. And as you know, Taiwan's industries have a massive transition to make, and Europe's had far more of a lead time. So what do you believe that European countries can contribute to help Taiwan reach its net zero goals?
Yeah, we also have, for example, the transition to electric vehicles, EVs. Europe is also a leader when it comes to manufacturing and the implementation of EV policies. We have had quite good success in Europe, varying success, of course, depending on the country. Taiwan last year, for example, when it came to new vehicle sales, about 10% accounted for electric vehicles. Europe, the number was 18%, so considerably more. We have, for example, perhaps the global leader being Norway, where 99% of new vehicles sold last year in Norway were electric vehicles. And this can be attributed to different policies that have been implemented, the different tax breaks, commodity tax breaks, etc. And I think Norway is a great example simply because all the things that are associated around fear and electric vehicles. I mean, Norway has one of the longest, in fact, the longest, apart from Russia, the longest border in Europe. And yet here we see a very, very successful implementation of electric vehicles in that country. Taiwan is ideal for electric vehicles. You can get on one charge from the north to the south, etc. It's a small, limited area to move in. So this is something where we're also making a big contribution, helping Taiwan make this transition to electric vehicles.
Step by step, isn't it? Freddie Höglund, CEO of the ECCT here in Taiwan. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for being part of the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.